Poor Waitress tried to avoid her Valentine's date until a single dad noticed her and changed everything. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Becca Walsh was crouched behind the kitchen door at Rosie's Family Diner in Minneapolis on February 14th at 6:38 p.m., pretending to check inventory on ketchup bottles they absolutely did not need her to count. And she was approximately 15 seconds away from faking a medical emergency or setting off the fire alarm or literally anything that would get her out of the dining room before Trevor Matthews walked through that front door and realized the girl from the dating app photos was not exactly the girl hiding in the back, with sweat stains under her uniform and a panic attack brewing in her chest. The restaurant smelled like bacon grease and desperation. Every single booth packed with couples doing that Valentine's Day thing where they stare into each other's eyes over overpriced surf and turf. And here was Becca at 29 years old about to get exposed as a catfish because she'd used photos from 2 years ago before her mom got sick and before caregiving for 6 months straight meant she gained 40 pounds stress eating frozen pizza at 2 in the morning between medication schedules and hospice nurse visits. Here's the thing. Nobody tells you about online dating when you're grieving. You post the version of yourself from before everything fell apart because that girl was confident and smiling and didn't spend her days wiping down tables while wondering if she'd ever feel like a real person again. And Becca had matched with Trevor 3 weeks ago, thinking maybe her mom would want her to try. Maybe putting herself out there was part of moving forward, except she'd been too chicken to update her profile pictures. And now this guy was about to walk in expecting a size 6 and getting a size 14 with grief weight and 0 apologies. Except she had about 1,000,000 apologies, actually. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket with a text that made her stomach drop straight through the floor. "Hey, just parked. Can't wait to finally meet you. You look even prettier than your photos, I bet." And Becca wanted to throw up right there next to the industrial dishwasher because Trevor had no idea what he was walking into, and she didn't have the guts to tell him. She peeked through the circular window in the kitchen door and watched the front entrance like it was about to explode. And sure enough, at 6:42, the bell above the door chimed, and in walked a guy who matched Trevor's photos almost exactly. Tall and clean-cut in a button-down shirt that screamed first date effort. And he stood there scanning the restaurant, clearly looking for someone who looked like the Becca from 2 years ago. The one with the defined jawline and the cute sundress, not the current Becca hiding like a coward in stained black pants and a name tag that was crooked because she'd been too anxious to care about details. Her coworker Janine pushed through the kitchen door with a tray of dirty plates and nearly knocked Becca over. "Girl, what are you doing back here? Your section's getting slammed." And Becca grabbed her arm and whispered, "That guy by the host stand, the one in the blue shirt, he's here for me, a date, but he doesn't know it's me, and I can't go out there, Janine. I just can't." Janine looked through the window and then back at Becca with this expression that was half pity, half exasperation. "You catfished him? Becca, come on, you gotta at least say hi." But Becca was already shaking her head so hard her ponytail whipped around. "I used old photos from before Mom got sick. Before I gained all this weight, he's gonna take one look at me and leave, and I cannot handle that rejection tonight. Not on Valentine's Day, not 3 months after burying my mother. I literally cannot do it." Janine sighed and squeezed her shoulder. "Okay, look, I'll tell him you called in sick, that the girl he's looking for isn't working tonight. But Becca, you gotta deal with this eventually." And Becca nodded, even though she had zero intention of dealing with anything. She was just gonna delete the app and live alone with 14 cats and die of embarrassment in about 50 years. What Becca didn't notice while she was having her crisis behind the kitchen door was that a little girl in pigtails sitting in booth 7 had absolutely clocked the entire situation, and 6-year-old Lily Porter was tugging on her dad's sleeve saying, "Daddy, why is that waitress hiding? Is she playing hide and seek?" Ryan Porter looked up from the menu he'd been studying and followed his daughter's pointing finger toward the kitchen, where, yeah, okay, there was definitely a waitress peeking around the doorframe, looking terrified of something. Ryan was 36 years old and worked as an electrician for a commercial company doing warehouse jobs and office building rewires, and he'd brought Lily to Rosie's for Valentine's dinner because it was their tradition now. Just the two of them, since her mom Amanda walked out 2 years ago and decided being a wife and mother in Minneapolis wasn't as exciting as being a corporate consultant in Seattle. Ryan wasn't bitter about it anymore. Well, okay, he was still a little bitter, but mostly he'd just accepted that some people aren't built for the long haul, and Amanda had made her choice. And now he was making grilled cheese at midnight and braiding hair before school, and doing his best to show Lily that one parent who stays is worth more than two parents where one doesn't want to be there. He looked at the waitress again and noticed she wasn't just hiding, she looked genuinely distressed, eyes locked on some guy standing by the front entrance. And Ryan's protective instincts kicked in immediately, because that's what 2 years of solo parenting does to you. It makes you hyper-aware of when someone's scared. "Maybe she's just taking a break, sweetie," Ryan said to Lily, but he kept watching because something felt off about the whole scene. The guy by the entrance was talking to the host, kept checking his phone, looking around like he was searching for someone specific, and the waitress ducked back behind the door completely, and Ryan saw her lean against the wall and put her head in her hands, and his brain immediately went to, is this guy dangerous? Is she hiding from an ex? Does she need help? He made a decision right there that was probably none of his business, but he'd never been great at minding his own business when someone looked like they were drowning. "Lilybug, I need you to stay right here for 1 minute. Okay, color your menu, I'll be right back." And Lily nodded, completely distracted by the crayons, and Ryan slid out of the booth and walked straight toward the kitchen, making eye contact with the host, who looked confused but didn't stop him. He pushed open the kitchen door gently and found the waitress standing there with her back to him, shoulders shaking like maybe she was crying. And he cleared his throat softly. "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but are you okay? My daughter noticed you looked upset, and I just wanted to make sure that guy out there isn't bothering you or making you feel unsafe." Becca spun around so fast she almost slipped on the tile floor and came face to face with a complete stranger. A guy with kind eyes and work boots and the sort of concerned expression that made her want to either hug him or die of embarrassment. And her voice came out way shakier than she meant it to. "I'm fine. I'm so sorry. This is so unprofessional. I'm fine, really." Ryan held up both hands like he was approaching a spooked animal. "You don't look fine, and I'm not trying to be weird. That guy keeps looking around and you're hiding, and I've got a daughter out there who asked me why you look scared, so I figured I'd check." Becca felt something crack open in her chest, because when was the last time anyone had just checked on her? When was the last time someone noticed she was struggling and actually said something instead of pretending everything was normal? "He's not dangerous," Becca heard herself say. "He's actually here to meet me, like a blind date kind of thing. But he doesn't know I'm me, and I used old photos, and I can't face him because I'm not what he's expecting. And I sound completely insane right now, I'm aware of that." Ryan's expression shifted from concerned to understanding, and maybe a little sad. "You're catfishing yourself?" And Becca let out this horrible laugh-sob combination. "I guess, yeah. I didn't mean to. I just used photos from before my life fell apart, and now I'm too ashamed to walk out there and admit I'm not her anymore." They stood there in the kitchen with the sounds of the dinner rush happening around them, fryer beeping and dishes clanging, and Ryan said something that would change the entire trajectory of Becca's night and maybe her whole life. "What if the problem isn't that you changed? What if the problem is you think changing makes you worth less? Because I'm going to tell you right now, from the outside looking in, you seem pretty brave for even showing up tonight." Becca stared at this random electrician dad who just wandered into the kitchen like some kind of accidental therapist and said the one thing she needed to hear, that showing up despite being terrified actually counted for something. And she felt tears burning behind her eyes because nobody had called her brave in approximately forever. Not since her mom died, and everyone just expected her to be fine and move on like grief had an expiration date. Ryan could see her face doing that thing where someone's trying really hard not to cry in front of a stranger, and he recognized it immediately because he'd done that exact same face about 600 times in the Walmart parking lot after Amanda left, sitting in his truck at 7 in the morning, pretending he had it together before going home to make Lily breakfast and act like her world hadn't just exploded. "Look, I don't know your situation," Ryan said, and his voice was gentle in that way that made it worse somehow. "But I spent 2 years thinking I wasn't enough because my wife walked out. Like maybe if I'd been more ambitious or made more money or been more exciting, she would have stayed. And it took me way too long to figure out that her leaving said everything about her and nothing about my worth. Becca wiped her eyes with her apron and let out a shaky breath. Your wife left? I'm sorry, that's awful. And Ryan shrugged like it didn't still sting sometimes. It was awful, still is some days. But my point is, I hid from dating for 2 years because I was scared of not being enough. And you're hiding in a kitchen for the same reason. And neither of us is doing ourselves any favors. Becca looked toward the dining room where Trevor was probably still standing there, checking his phone, wondering if he'd been stood up. And something shifted in her chest. Some small spark of the person she used to be before grief and shame took over. What if I go out there and he's disgusted? What if he literally just walks out? Her voice came out small and Ryan said, then he's an idiot and you dodged a bullet. But what if you go out there and he's cool about it? What if he's been scared too? You won't know unless you try. Becca made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff, smoothed down her uniform, even though it was wrinkled beyond saving, took the hair tie out and redid her ponytail with shaking hands and said, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go tell him the truth. And if I completely humiliate myself, at least there's a witness. Ryan grinned. I'll be at booth 7 with my daughter if you need an escape route. Just give me a signal and I'll fake a plumbing emergency or something. And Becca actually laughed for real. You're weirdly good at this pep talk thing. And Ryan said, 2 years of convincing a 6-year-old that vegetables won't kill her. You develop skills. Becca walked out of that kitchen with her heart trying to exit through her throat, and every single eye in the restaurant felt like it was on her, even though realistically nobody cared. And she walked straight up to Trevor, who looked up from his phone with this expectant smile that immediately made her feel worse. Trevor? Hi, I'm Becca. I'm so sorry I'm late, she said, and watched his face do this microscopic thing where his eyes scanned her entire body in like 2 seconds flat, taking in the uniform and the weight and the messy ponytail. And she saw the exact moment he realized she wasn't what he'd been expecting. To his credit, Trevor's smile didn't completely disappear. It just got tighter around the edges. Oh, wow, Becca. Hi. You look different than your photos. And there it was, the elephant in the room wearing a neon sign. Becca felt her face burning, but she forced herself to keep eye contact. Yeah, about that. I need to be honest with you. Those photos are from 2 years ago, before my mom got sick. I should have updated them and I didn't. And that's on me. I'm sorry for wasting your time. She was waiting for him to make some excuse and bail, but Trevor did this weird laugh and ran his hand over his head. Okay, so funny story. My photos are also like 2 years old, from before I started stress eating my way through a job I hate. So I guess we're both guilty here. Becca looked at him, really looked, and realized he was right. His hairline had receded way more than his profile pictures showed, and he was carrying probably an extra 30 or 40 pounds himself, and the whole situation was so absurd she started laughing. Like really laughing. And Trevor joined in, and suddenly they were just two people who'd both been too scared to show up as themselves. You want to grab coffee somewhere and start over? Like honest version? Trevor asked and Becca nodded. Because why not? She'd already jumped off the cliff, might as well see where it landed. Yeah, okay. Let me just tell my boss. There's a place 2 blocks down that stays open late. They ended up at Grind Coffee House, which was one of those hipster spots with mismatched furniture and indie music playing just loud enough to drown out awkward silence. And for the first 20 minutes, everything felt okay. They talked about their jobs, and he told her about working in IT at a healthcare company, and she told him about the diner and her mom and the grief that still felt too big to carry some days. Trevor seemed understanding at first, nodding in the right places, saying, that must have been really hard, with what sounded like genuine sympathy. And Becca started thinking maybe this could actually work. Maybe honesty was the right call. But then somewhere around minute 25, Trevor's vibe shifted in this way. Becca couldn't quite name at first, like he started making these little comments that seemed harmless, but had teeth underneath. It's great you're working through your grief. I think it's important to not let yourself go during hard times, like maintaining routines and health and stuff. And Becca felt her stomach tighten. What do you mean, let myself go? Trevor backtracked, but not really. Oh no, I just mean like, it's easy to use food as comfort. I'm guilty of it too, obviously. But I've been trying to get back to the gym, do the work, get back to my fighting weight. Becca set down her coffee cup and something cold settled in her chest. Are you saying I should be trying to lose weight? And Trevor's face did this thing where he tried to look concerned instead of judgmental. I'm just saying we both know these aren't our best versions, and if we're going to pursue something, it's good to have shared goals, right? Like getting healthy together. Becca sat there in that coffee shop with the indie music mocking her and realized she was sitting across from a guy who'd also catfished his profile, who was also carrying extra weight, who was also clearly dealing with his own insecurities, and somehow he'd decided that gave him permission to comment on her body like it was a project that needed fixing. Here's the thing, Trevor, Becca said, and her voice came out way calmer than she felt. I spent 6 months watching my mom die. I gained weight because I was surviving, not because I let myself go. And honestly, the fact that you're sitting here with your own old photos, judging me for the exact same thing you did is pretty rich. Trevor's face flushed. I wasn't judging. I was trying to be motivational, like we could help each other. And Becca stood up and grabbed her jacket. I don't need that kind of help. I need someone who sees me as a whole person, not a before and after photo. So I'm going to head out. Good luck with everything. She walked out of that coffee shop feeling about 17 different emotions, embarrassment and anger and relief all tangled up together. And she ended up back at Rosie's because her shift wasn't technically over, and also because she wanted to thank the random dad who'd given her the push to face her fear, even if it ended badly. Becca pushed through the front door and scanned the dining room, found booth 7 where Ryan was still sitting, but Lily was completely knocked out, curled up on the bench seat with her head on her dad's jacket like a makeshift pillow. And Ryan was just sitting there scrolling his phone, looking like every tired single parent who'd ever existed. She walked over and slid into the booth across from him without asking, Hey, so I did the thing, told him the truth. We went for coffee and it turns out he's actually kind of a jerk, so thanks for the encouragement, I guess, even though it didn't work out. Ryan looked up and his face did this soft, sympathetic thing. He was a jerk about the photos? And Becca shook her head. He was a jerk about everything, acted like we should bond over both needing to lose weight, like that's a cute couples activity. I walked out after 30 minutes. Ryan winced. Ouch, yeah, that's rough, I'm sorry. But hey, at least you know now. Better 30 minutes of coffee than 6 months of dating someone who sees you as a fixer-upper. Becca felt herself smile despite everything. That's exactly what it felt like he was interviewing me for the role of project girlfriend. And Ryan laughed. My ex-wife used to do that. Always had some version of me she was trying to create. Never the version that actually existed. It's exhausting. They sat there talking while the Valentine's Day dinner rush wound down around them. Other couples paying their checks and leaving hand in hand. And Becca found herself relaxing for the first time all night. Ryan told her about Lily's obsession with unicorns and how he'd had to learn to braid hair from YouTube videos at 5 in the morning. And Becca told him about her mom's terrible taste in reality TV and how they had watched every season of every dating show together during those last months. Your mom sounds like she was awesome, Ryan said, and Becca felt her throat get tight. She really was. She kept telling me to get back out there and live my life. But I don't think she meant go on dates with guys who treat weight gain like a moral failing. Ryan leaned back against the booth. For what it's worth, I think you handled tonight pretty brave. You showed up as yourself even when it was scary. That counts for something. Becca looked at this guy who was still essentially a stranger but who'd somehow shown her more kindness in 2 conversations than Trevor had in 30 minutes. And she felt something shift. Not romantic exactly, but something like hope that maybe decent humans still existed. Lily stirred in her sleep and mumbled something about pancakes, and Ryan smiled that tired dad smile. That's my cue. Gotta get her home before she fully wakes up, or we'll be here another hour. And Becca stood to let him out of the booth. Thank you, she said and meant it, for checking on me earlier, for not letting me hide, even though it didn't end like a fairy tale or whatever. And Ryan hefted Lily into his arms, where she immediately buried her face in his shoulder. Fairy tales are overrated anyway. Real life's messier, but at least it's honest. Becca watched them leave, this exhausted electrician and his sleeping daughter, and thought maybe the worst Valentine's Day ever had just taught her something important about knowing her worth. The next morning, Becca showed up for her Sunday breakfast shift at Rosie's, expecting the usual crowd of church families and hungover college kids trying to cure their Saturday night mistakes with pancakes. But what she absolutely did not expect was Ryan Porter walking through the front door at 9:15, holding a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and looking nervous as hell. Her heart did this weird jump thing that she immediately told herself to ignore because she was not about to develop feelings for a customer who'd witnessed her Valentine's Day meltdown less than 24 hours ago. That was a recipe for disaster, and she'd had enough disaster to last a lifetime. Ryan spotted her wiping down the counter and walked over with Lily trailing behind him, looking way more awake than any 6-year-old should be on a Sunday morning. And he set the flowers down on the counter between them like he was defusing a bomb. "Hey, so these are for you, not in a weird way, just in a, you were really brave last night, and I thought you deserved flowers from someone who isn't a jerk way." Becca felt her face heat up, and she looked around to make sure her coworkers weren't watching this interaction. "You didn't have to do that, but thank you. They're really pretty." And she meant it because nobody had bought her flowers in longer than she could remember. Definitely not since before her mom got sick. Lily tugged on Ryan's sleeve. "Daddy said you had a bad date with a mean man. I'm sorry the mean man was mean." And Becca had to bite her lip to keep from laughing because the pure 6-year-old logic of it was somehow exactly what she needed to hear. "Thank you, sweetie. Yeah, he wasn't very nice, but I'm okay," Becca said, and Lily nodded very seriously. "My mommy wasn't very nice either. She left us. But Daddy says we're better without mean people." Ryan looked mortified. "Lily Bug, we don't. That's not exactly. Okay, you know what? Yes, that's basically accurate." And Becca caught his eye and they both smiled at the absolute inability to filter that little kids have. Ryan cleared his throat and shifted his weight like he was gearing up to say something important. "So I know this is forward, and you can absolutely say no, but I was wondering if maybe you'd want to grab dinner sometime, like an actual date, with someone who thinks you're pretty great exactly as you are right now." Becca felt panic and hope collide in her chest because part of her wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to believe that this kind, genuine guy was actually interested in her. But the bigger, louder part of her was screaming that she was nowhere near ready for this, that she was still actively grieving and hating herself most days, and she'd just end up hurting him, or worse, letting him see how broken she still felt inside. "Ryan, I really appreciate that," Becca heard herself saying, and watched his face start to fall before she even finished. "But I'm not ready yet, like genuinely not ready. I'm still dealing with losing my mom, and I'm in this place where I don't even like myself most days, and that's not fair to bring into someone else's life." She expected him to do what most guys do, make some excuse and bail and never come back. But instead, Ryan just nodded like he completely understood. "Okay, I get that. Healing isn't linear, and you've got to take care of yourself first. But can I ask you something?" Becca nodded and he continued. "Would it be okay if Lily and I still came in for breakfast sometimes, like as friends? No pressure. I just think you're good people, and we could use more of that in our lives." Becca felt something loosen in her chest that had been tight since the night before. "Yeah, I'd really like that actually. Friend sounds good." And Ryan's smile was so genuine it made her believe that maybe some people really did just want to be around her without expecting anything in return. That became their thing over the next couple months, Ryan and Lily showing up almost every Sunday for breakfast, and sometimes on Saturday mornings too. Always sitting in Becca's section, always leaving tips that were way too generous, and slowly, carefully, Becca started to feel like herself again. Or maybe like a new version of herself that was still figuring out who she was after everything. Lily would bring her drawings to show Becca, crayon masterpieces of unicorns and rainbows, and sometimes pictures of the three of them together that made Becca's heart ache in a good way. And Ryan would ask her how her week was and actually listen to the answer, not just waiting for his turn to talk. Somewhere around week 5, Becca started seeing a grief counselor because her boss Janine had basically insisted, said she had good insurance through the diner, and she needed to use it before she had a breakdown in the walk-in freezer, and Becca had reluctantly agreed. Therapy was harder than she expected. Sitting in that office talking about her mom and the weight gain and the shame she'd been carrying like a backpack full of rocks. But her therapist, Dr. Kim, was patient and didn't try to fix her, just helped her untangle all the thoughts that had gotten knotted up. She also joined a caregiver support group that met Thursday nights at the community center. Bunch of people who'd lost parents or spouses and were trying to figure out how to exist in the after. And for the first time in months, Becca felt less alone in her grief. Ryan noticed the changes even before Becca did. The way she started smiling more easily, the way she didn't apologize for taking up space, the way she started wearing her hair down sometimes instead of always in that tight ponytail. 2 months after Valentine's Day, on a random Tuesday in April, Becca was refilling Ryan's coffee when she just blurted out, "Do you want to go to the park with me and Lily this weekend? Like as a date, or a friend date, or whatever you want to call it? I'm still figuring this out." Ryan looked up at her with surprise and something that looked a lot like joy. "Yeah, I'd really love that. Lily would lose her mind. She's been asking when you're going to come play with us outside of the restaurant." That Saturday, they met at Lake Harriet, and it was one of those perfect Minnesota spring days where the weather finally remembered it was supposed to be warm, and Lily ran straight for the playground while Ryan and Becca walked the path around the lake, carrying a blanket and a cooler full of sandwiches and juice boxes. They found a spot under a tree and spread out the blanket, and Becca felt nervous in a different way than she had on Valentine's Day. This was anticipation instead of dread, hope instead of shame. "I'm still figuring out how to do this," Becca said while watching Lily climb the jungle gym. "The whole letting someone in thing, I'm not gonna be perfect at it." Ryan bumped her shoulder with his. "Good, because I'm a mess at it too. I haven't been on a real date since Amanda left. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I like spending time with you, and that feels like a good place to start." They spent the afternoon just existing together, Ryan pushing Lily on the swings, while Becca took pictures on her phone, eating sandwiches that got a little soggy from the cooler, talking about everything and nothing. And when Lily crashed hard around 4 o'clock and fell asleep on the blanket between them, Ryan reached over and took Becca's hand. "I'm really glad you asked me out," he said quietly so he wouldn't wake Lily. "I would have waited as long as you needed, but I'm glad we're here." Becca squeezed his hand back. "Me too. I'm still scared I'm going to mess this up. But I want to try. You and Lily make me feel like maybe I'm allowed to be happy again." 6 months turned into a year, and Becca met Ryan's parents and his sister, who all treated her like she'd been part of the family forever. And Ryan met Becca's dad, who still lived in Duluth, and who pulled Ryan aside to say, "You take care of my girl. She's been through enough." And Ryan had promised he would. Lily started calling Becca her best friend, which felt more genuine than trying to force some kind of mom role, and Becca would go to Lily's school events and help with homework and braid her hair on the mornings when Ryan had early job sites. They didn't move in together right away because Becca wanted to take things slow, wanted to make sure she was choosing this relationship from a healthy place, not from loneliness or desperation, and Ryan respected that even when his lease was up, and it would have made financial sense. The next Valentine's Day rolled around and Becca was working the same shift at Rosie's. Same section, same uniform that fit better now that she'd stopped stress-eating her feelings and started actually processing them in therapy. Ryan texted her at 6 asking if she could take a break around 7, that he and Lily wanted to stop by, and Becca wrote back, "You know I'm working, you don't have to come, keep me company." But he just sent back a smiley face. At exactly 7:15, Ryan walked in with Lily, who was dressed up in a fancy dress, and holding a sign that said, "Will you marry my daddy?" in glitter letters that were already shedding everywhere, and the entire restaurant went silent and then erupted in whispers. Becca stood there frozen by table 4 with a coffee pot in her hand, and Ryan walked straight to booth 7, the same booth where Lily had fallen asleep last year, the same booth where this whole thing had started. He knelt down right there on the diner floor that Becca had mopped 1,000 times and pulled out a ring box. "Becca Walsh, you taught me that healing doesn't have a timeline and love doesn't have requirements. You showed up scared and did it anyway. You let me wait for you, and then you chose me when you were ready. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again?" Becca was full-on ugly crying in front of her entire dinner rush. Tears and snot and absolutely zero shame. And she nodded so hard she thought her head might fall off. Yes, oh my God, yes, of course, yes. And she didn't even care that her mascara was running, or that Janine was filming the whole thing on her phone, or that half the customers were crying too. Ryan slid the ring on her finger, and Lily launched herself at both of them, screaming, "We're going to be a family for real now." And Becca held them both, thinking about how a year ago she'd been hiding in the kitchen, convinced she wasn't worthy of love, and now she was standing in the middle of the dining room, completely seen and completely chosen. Sometimes avoiding the wrong person puts you exactly where you need to be to find the right one. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you at your worst and trust they'll still be there when you're ready for your best. Becca stopped hiding and started healing. Ryan stopped waiting for perfection and started choosing presence. And together they built something real out of honest broken pieces. Love doesn't fix you, but it can hold space for you while you fix yourself. And that's worth more than any fairy tale. If this story reminded you that you're worthy of love, exactly as you are right now, that healing is possible and patience is powerful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear they don't have to be perfect to be loved. Thanks for being here with us. And remember, your timeline is your own, and the right person will wait.